Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webcast of the National Center on Elder Abuse, hosted by NAPSA, the National Adult Protective Services Association. I'm Kathleen Quinn, Executive Director of NAPSA, and our presenter today will be Lieutenant Wade Gorley of the Oklahoma City Police Department. Our very popular topic today is worker safety for APS. We have 650 people registered for this webcast, and we know we have many more who are participating in group settings. Lieutenant Gorley will focus on the rules of safety, dangerous situations, what to do or not to do when interacting with clients, risk factors, communication skills, and meth labs. Please note, if you need technical assistance during the webcast, the number on your screen right now is the number you should call, 1-800-939-8761. Also, the webcast will be archived and will be available for later viewing. A notice will be put out on the National Elder Abuse Listserv. Now, I know many of you are familiar with the National Center on Elder Abuse, but let me take just a second to tell you a little bit about it. NCEA is funded by the Administration on Aging, or AOA, and is a consortium of 3 partner organizations. The Clearinghouse on Abuse and Neglect of the Elderly, or CANE, which is at the University of Delaware, and which co-manages the center with Stephanie Whittier, at AOA. The National Committee for the Prevention of Elder Abuse, or NCPE, which has presented a number of previous webcasts for us, and of course NAPSA. NCEA serves as a national resource center dedicated to preventing elder abuse through disseminating information, providing technical assistance and training resources, and synthesizing research for the field. NAPSA, as many of you know, is the only national organization which represents APS programs and professionals as well as APS clients. We are the national voice of APS, and we're very proud to be a partner of the National Center. Please note that in today's webcast, questions will be addressed near the end of the presentation. Please email your questions from your presentation screen, and Aubrey Grant of NAPSA will read as many of them as we have time for to Lieutenant Gorley. It is now my pleasure and honor to introduce today's speaker. Lieutenant Wade Gorley of the Oklahoma City Police Department has 21 years of law enforcement experience and is a certified instructor. He has developed courses in APS as well as officer survival, workplace violence, worker safety for home health care, and child welfare. Lieutenant Gorley has conducted the safety training course for new APS workers in Oklahoma for 4 years and has trained almost 200 APS specialists. He's also presented safety training at the Oklahoma Conference on Aging and regularly conducts training on officer safety. We are very grateful to Lieutenant Gorley as he is volunteering his time and freely sharing his extensive expertise with us. And we really appreciate his generosity since we know he does this training professionally. I will now turn the program over to Lieutenant Gorley.
Okay, thank you. As was said, my name is Wade Gorley, and I have been with the police department for 21 years. And the program that I'm presenting to you now is actually a 3-hour presentation that I normally do for our APS workers here. So it's been greatly condensed to try and meet the time frame, and I hope it gives you guys at least a little bit of overview in how to better watch or put yourself on guard when you go into someone else's home. The tips and things that I use or that I'll be giving to you are things that we as police officers use when we go into a home or when we take a call and we approach any type of scene. They're basically the same kind of things that we look for in order to prevent putting ourselves in danger. And so that's basically the goal behind this. I'll tell you right now, too, I've never done anything like this. This is a little weird for me. I'm used to talking to a live audience and getting feedback, so I hope you'll be patient with me if I make some mistakes here and there. So, but I'll get started with the presentation now, and again, I hope to give you some information that'll kind of help you. I've kind of come up with, what I call 3 rules of safety, and this information that I'm giving you doesn't just apply if you're at work. It applies anywhere that you're at, whether it be, going to the mall, to the grocery store, going about your day-to-day business. They're just basic things that I've learned through my career in talking to people and interviewing them after they've become the victim of crime. There's things that suspects look for, that people look for that want to victimize others, and they basically select their targets. They're usually very good at it. If you've ever watched any video of crimes that have happened, say at a Walmart parking lot or something to that effect, you always can see these people kind of cruising around the parking lot, and they're looking for an easy target. So one of the things out of these 3 rules of safety to help keep you out of trouble is to be alert. In anything that you do, you've got to be paying attention to what's around you. And by being alert, that means be focused on what you're doing. When it comes time for you to make a home visit or to go out into the field to do some work, make sure you're focused on that. You're not thinking about anything else, that you're paying attention to everything around you as you're pulling up to the residence or getting out of your car. Don't be doing things like talking on your cell phone. It's a distraction. Be focused on the job at hand and be paying attention to everything around you. People that are looking for someone to victimize or looking for that easy target, they're looking for somebody that's not paying attention so they can creep up on them, steal their purse, their wallet, and be on their way. They don't want to be seen. They want to be quick about it. So I always tell people you got to be alert. You got to pay attention to what's going on around you. And another question I get asked a lot too is, what do you mean by being alert? What do I look for? And probably the easiest way to answer that question is think about what's normal for the situation that you're in. For example, if you're at the parking lot of the grocery store, what normally do people do there? What normally do they do when they go into the grocery store? Basically, you park your car, you walk in, you go through the aisles, you pick out what you need, you have your basket, you fill it up, you go check out, and you leave. And that's pretty much what you're looking for, is anything that's out of the ordinary of that, anything that someone is doing that just doesn't make sense. Maybe a car that's driving through the parking lot and not really stopping or driving past some good parking places, but it's obvious they're watching other people. A person that's milling through the aisles of the grocery store and doesn't have anything in their hands, but they're following somebody around. That's the kind of thing that you're looking for, is something out of the ordinary. Think about it, too, when you pull into a neighborhood. Most of us have a residence. We live in a neighborhood, and we know what's normal and what people do every day in a neighborhood. So you look for something that doesn't fit that typical mode, so to speak. For example, you may see people, if it's a nice day, they're out walking their dog, playing out in the front yard with the kids, those kind of things. Those are normal. If it's a hot day and you see someone wearing a big, thick jacket, that's abnormal. You don't normally see something like that. Or somebody standing on a street corner and cars are pulling up and, having little short conversations with this person. It looks like they're handing stuff to each other and driving off. So anything that you would think in your neighborhood you would look at and go, that just doesn't look right. Same thing. If it's an apartment complex or wherever you live, just anything that's out of the ordinary, that's what you're looking for, and that's what you should be alerted to. And the second thing is walking with confidence. You got to carry yourself in a manner that basically lets people know, look, I'm here for business. I'm here to do a job. You're going to go in, make your visit, do what you're going to do, and you're going to leave. And part of that walking with confidence, shoulders back, head held high, you're looking around, you're paying attention, making eye contact with people, and just, making sure that person knows that, you're carrying yourself with that confidence. You don't want to be bothered. You don't want to be messed with. And then last but not least, and probably most important, is you've got to trust your instincts. Everybody has an innate ability to sense danger. It's built into all of us. So if something doesn't feel right, or you get that little feeling that, there's just something wrong here, it doesn't feel good, pay attention to that, because it's usually right. We as police officers use that all the time. For example, I may stop a car on a traffic stop, and I just think, man, something doesn't feel right. This person, they're doing something that just doesn't look right to me, makes me uncomfortable, and I may change how I do that. Instead of walking up on the driver's side, I walk up on the passenger side. And for you, instead of walking up and knocking on that door, you may choose a different way. You may, get somebody to go with you or change it to a different time. There's something that just doesn't feel right, so you need to pay attention to that. And one thing, as I go through this presentation as well, I always stress to people, and I know everybody's policies, procedures, they may be different, so if anything I say in here, goes against your procedures or your rules, obviously your rules would supersede that. But in Oklahoma, I tell every class that I teach, do not ever hesitate to contact law enforcement if you think that there's an issue there, if you don't feel comfortable. Because I know at our department we often are contacted to assist APS workers in the performance of their duties because they may not feel safe going into this house, or they've had a confrontation or something like that in the past. So trust your instincts, and if you need our help, don't hesitate to call us. Another thing, too, that I think is very important for you to have with you at all times is a cellular phone. It can be your lifeline if you get yourself into trouble. And I know that sounds pretty basic that, yeah, I'm always going to have my phone with me. But what I want you to think of with that cellular phone is the thing that's going to get you in trouble. And number one is you get somewhere and the battery's dead. Never fails. It happens at the worst possible time. So I tell people at my desk right now, my phone is sitting in a charger, and it's charging so that if I leave my office, it's going to be ready to go. If I'm in the car, I have a charger in the car so that when I get to a location, I know my phone is going to be charged, because invariably it'll run down at the worst time when you really need it. And if that's your only way to call 911 or to get help, you really want that phone to be in good working order. Another thing, too, is always check your phone, and before you go into a residence or you get ready to, a situation where you're doing a visit, make sure you have a signal that you're going to have reception. A lot of our areas that we work in are rural. The phone reception isn't very good at all. It may not even exist. So I tell people, when you start pulling up to that house, check your cell phone. Make sure you've got a signal. So if you get in that house and trouble happens, you'll at least be able to make a phone call. Also recommend, if it's feasible, depending on your circumstances, if you drive a state vehicle or a personal vehicle or however that goes, to always keep a cell phone charger in each vehicle that you're going to drive. And that way you don't have to worry about getting out somewhere and go, oh, man, I forgot my charger. If you've got one available to you in each vehicle, then you never have to worry about that. Also bring up Auto Club memberships, just something to think about, maybe an option for you. You're going to be out sometimes different hours. You may be in locations that you're not familiar with. You never know. You can run over a pothole, get a flat tire, those kind of things. And you just don't want to be out in the middle of nowhere waiting on somebody to help you or trying to call somebody, a family member, friend that you may not be able to get a hold of. They may be working, whatever the case may be. And Auto Club membership is always a good thing to have, so that if you do need help, you can get it out there to you. Have somebody change your tire, bring you some gas, or jump start your vehicle as needed. So bottom line, your objective is to stay safe and not get hurt. One of the things that I really stress, and it's sometimes something I really have to get across to people in our line of work, because obviously you got into this work because you want to help people. And what happens is you fall into a mindset of, I'm going to help people regardless. And we forget sometimes that our safety has to come first, and that's why I put it there as number one. Your safety in everything that you do always comes first. You're never going out to work each day with the objective in mind that I'm going to put myself in harm's way or get myself hurt. We don't do that, and you guys definitely shouldn't do that. You're not sworn, you don't take any oath, you're not armed, those kind of things. So you've got to put your safety first. And when something doesn't feel right, or the situation becomes dangerous to you, then you've got to get yourself out of there. And that's one of the things that I stress throughout my presentation is, when it doesn't feel right or you feel your safety is compromised, then leave. Don't stay in that situation anymore, because the longer you stay, the more chance you have of something happening. And then, of course, you do have an obligation, so to speak, even though not to jeopardize yourself, but you want to do what you can to help the others in the home as well, whether it be a client or any other residents inside the home. But what I tell people is very much true, is that if you put your safety first, everything else falls in line, and it falls right down this line. So if the situation gets compromised, you feel uncomfortable, you get yourself out of that, then there's no reason for the situation to escalate, which in turn keeps everybody else safe in the home. And I know sometimes you may walk into some situations and you may see some real desperate things, some things that you may not want to leave behind. But keep in mind, just because you leave doesn't mean that you're going away and you're not going to come back and help this person. You're going to get the proper resources, and you're going to come back and deal with this situation. So Always remember, your safety is number one in everything you do. So what is a dangerous situation? And really, you got to think about any time that you're present, there's always the possibility of danger. You're dealing with, what can be some volatile situations. It's very difficult if you've ever done it or you've ever had a family member or known somebody who's been faced with caring for an elderly person or someone that cannot care for themselves. It's very time-consuming. There is no vacation. There is no break. And so people get a little frustrated. And usually when you get involved in a situation, it's because somebody needs your help. And when people need help, they often have kind of a feeling of desperation. So there's always that possibility that a dangerous situation could develop. People could get frustrated, they can get upset, and they got to have a way to vent that. They can't maybe vent that a lot at home, and so you're there now, and you're that person that they could vent to. Also think about just the simple fact that people don't like strangers coming into their home. They're not going to take too kindly to that. Even if your intent is to help, you're being nice, polite, all of those things, just kind of put the shoe on the other foot and think about it for a second. If you're at home, somebody knocks on your door, you don't really know who this person is, it just puts you a little bit on guard because that's your home, that's your sanctuary, your private place. And I always tell people to keep that in mind because it really helps you in understanding the individual coming into their home and understanding better how to respect that and deal with that and prevent confrontation. And then you also have to remember that everybody you deal with is a stranger. And anytime there's two strangers together, possibility for conflict always exists because you don't know who that person is. Even if you've been to their house before, maybe you've been there multiple times. This is somebody that regularly needs assistance that you're going out to on a regular basis. You still do not know them. You don't know what they've dealt with between the last time and this time. For example, they could have just lost their job, and you wouldn't know that. They could have just had a fight with a spouse. You just don't know. You have no idea. And, for us, I've had situations where I've dealt with someone, haven't had any problem, and then I deal with them a week later, and all of a sudden they don't want to deal with the police. They want to be confrontational. So you always have to be alert to that factor, to all of those factors. Doesn't mean that every situation you go in, bad things are going to happen, but you always have to be ready in case it is, because if you're not, then you get caught off guard, and then that's when, you're more likely to get yourself in a situation you shouldn't be in. So I don't want to make you paranoid, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I just want you to be prepared. So some of the things, we've talked about already, but just to kind of reiterate on your actions, the things that you do, how it can prevent danger. You got to act assertive and confident. Remember, when you go out and you're doing your job, it's just that. You have a reason for being there. There's procedures and things that you have to follow, so have confidence in that. Be assertive to the extent of, not overbearing, but just that, you know what you're doing. You've got a job to do. Keep it on a professional level is what I'm trying to say. And when you let that guard down, that's when things can happen. So, just show that confidence when you show up there. You don't want to look vulnerable. I talked about talking on the phone. Anything that's a distraction, looking down and not looking up, just makes you look a little bit more vulnerable. Keep in mind, you're going to look out of place, and that's part of being vulnerable as well. Because just think about in your neighborhood. You know who's supposed to be there. You know who doesn't belong, and so if somebody shows up and you've never seen them before, they look out of place, and you know that. So you're gonna be in that position when you go into these homes. Probably the most important thing I can tell you, if you don't listen to anything to me, listen on this: keep work and home separate. Do not bring your personal life into your work life. And for some of the groups that I teach, they work in real small towns, maybe rural areas. It's hard enough to do that as it is, so let's don't make it any easier on them. The thing that is important to remember in these types of situations is that these are family type of situations that you're dealing with, you're getting involved in, you can relate to them very well. It's very easy to start bringing some of your personal stories into the situation, and I want everybody to really resist the urge to do that. Don't talk about your family, your personal life. Keep that separate. Don't leave things in your car that are personal, that could be tied to your home address. Like if you have some mail or you've been running errands, everybody in their personal car usually has some things in there that's personal to them and that, can identify them. So you want to make sure when you're pulling into neighborhoods and other places that you don't have something in your car somebody could look in and find out your home address. I recommend, too, that you don't carry purses or, briefcases, things into the house that have your personal items in it, like your wallet, your billfold, ID, those kind of things. Try to keep that as separate as you can, because what happens is if you get yourself in a house and something starts to happen and you need to get yourself out in a hurry, last thing you want to do is be sitting there going, oh, I realize I need to get out of here real quick, but I need to go back over to the dining room and get my bag, and before I leave the house. So do everything you can to keep work and home separate. Don't intermix those two, because we want to, we don't want to bring work home with us. We don't want to bring something into our personal lives that we didn't need to do. Wearing sensible clothing, limited use of jewelry, anything that's going to draw attention to you that could make you a target. Wear comfortable clothing. As you get dressed every day, probably the easiest thing to do is think to yourself, if I have to run or get away, is what I'm wearing conducive to do that? The type of shoes that I'm wearing, would I be able to run in these shoes if I needed to? The clothing that you're wearing, is there anything somebody could really grab on and, cause me a problem, like a scarf or something like that? So just think about that as you're getting dressed each day, just in case you run into an issue. You want to be able to get away as quickly as you can. Knowing where you're going is very important. You look out a place coming in a neighborhood anyway, the last thing you do is want to get lost, pull down a dead-end street, where you can't get turned around real good, those kind of things. It's real important that you know where you're going so you can get in, get out, do your visit, and get back, to the offices as quickly and safely as you can. Carrying a whistle or other noise maker, this is a little trick that I think works pretty well, because what happens is, especially if you're in an apartment complex or a neighborhood where the houses are close together, people get conditioned to noise. They get conditioned to hearing, screaming and yelling and those kind of things. And we don't want to, we want to be able to draw attention to ourselves if needed. An example I use, I don't know about you guys from different parts of the country, but one of the things I hear all the time is car alarms going off falsely. And I've gotten to where if I hear a car alarm going off, I usually don't think somebody's breaking into the car. I just think another car alarm's going off. They false alarm all the time. You get conditioned to that. Whatever it is that you're around a lot, you get conditioned to it. So if you hear screaming and yelling and kids playing and that kind of stuff all the time, you're not going to get up and look outside. Whereas somebody blowing a whistle or a little air horn device or something like that, that's not something people hear every day. And so they would be more likely to look outside. Another thing, you've probably heard before is instead of yelling help, yelling fire. Somebody thinks something's on fire, they'll get up and look, What this does a couple of things. First of all, it draws attention, which criminals don't like. They don't like people looking at them. They don't want to be seen. Then number two, oftentimes something like that, if somebody, if I as a thief am going to come steal your purse, I've got a plan in my mind. I know how that's going to go in my mind, and I've played it out. I probably didn't have in my plan anywhere that you were going to pull out a whistle or a horn or something and start making a loud noise. And so that sometimes in and of itself can just scare somebody away because it wasn't in their plan and it messes them up. So again, just talking about keeping work and home separate. Do not give out information about your family or yourself. Don't use personal stories. Don't tell people where you live, those kind of things. Remember, they're strangers. We don't know who they are. The thing is, you've got to always be aware of everything around you. Start today. When you leave your workplace to go home, look around at everything. Look around the parking lot. When you're driving around in your car, look around, see what's around you when you stop at stop signs. Just get in the habit of being alert and paying attention. We kind of get in our vehicles or our workplaces or wherever we're at, and we kind of get shielded into that. We get to thinking that we're oblivious to the rest of the world because, we're protected. We're inside this box, so to speak, and it's really not the case. You want to get in the habit of being alert everywhere you go, because if you don't see danger, you don't recognize it, then you can't escape from it or defend yourself from it. So it's very important, too, for you guys, since you're going to be working in the field, make sure somebody knows where you're going and when you'll return. It's sort of what I call the sign out, sign in method, but the best thing that I've found is what we call the buddy system. Utilize people in your office, depending on your office size. You need to have at least a couple of people that are your buddies that you're going to keep in contact with all day. and that are going to make sure that you know where they are and they know where you are at all different times. The reason you want to have more than one person is people take days off, vacation, those kind of things, call in sick. So you want to always make sure that you've got a buddy available to you. So make sure you guys, whether it be texting each other or calling each other or just something so that somebody knows where you are every time you step out of the office. If something happens to you, you want somebody checking on you, or if you need help, you want them looking right away. You don't want them waiting 3-4 hours because nobody's heard from you, and that's just your normal routine. Travel in teams when possible. If you need some help, you're not comfortable with going into a certain area, ask somebody to go with you. Chances are they probably have a visit maybe that they're going to make that they want some help with too. I talked a little bit about not carrying a purse. Very important. Purse, briefcase. You want as few things in your hand as possible. Some of you may have computers or things like that you have to take in. That's fine. That's not a problem because the main thing is that's not a personal item. It's not something that, if you have to get up and leave in a hurry, you're not going to think twice about leaving that, but you will think twice about leaving your purse, and it could slow your exit. Another thing that's important with that is keeping your arms free. So if you need to get away or run, you can do that. And try to time your visits as much as you can during daylight hours. A lot of times, especially if it's a location or you've documented previously that this house that you're going to maybe has somebody who drinks a lot or something like that or uses drugs, the earlier you catch them, the better you're going to be because most people do their partying and things during the later times of the day and at night. So always try to time your visits during the day. Less people in the neighborhood and those kind of things, and it's also more visible. It's safer to be out during daylight hours. Personal triggers, this is just a little section I just talk about. Basically, the main point I try to get across here is don't start a confrontation that you don't need to start. Remember, people are in frustrating situations. Sometimes they'll want to vent to you. So, don't allow yourself to get sucked into a fight or something that you don't need to do or a confrontation, because a lot of times people will do that just to get you focused off of what your job is. They'll try to distract you by doing that. The thing is, you've got to recognize your limits. I've been in some of these houses that you guys have been in. I've seen some very bad situations as an investigator and a patrol officer, where people have been physically or sexually abused, and it can really make you mad. And I have to keep the personal side out of that, and that's I guess what I'm trying to stress to you is that if you can't control yourself, then you can't control anything from becoming a hostile situation. So if somebody's going to get upset with you and you're calling them names or you're antagonizing, you're going to oftentimes have conflict that you don't really need. And understand, too, people will test your limits. They're going to try to get you distracted. They may not want you to know what's going on in that house, so they may use different tactics to try to get you distracted. So don't fall into that trap. Don't let them bait you into a confrontation. So just some things you should not do that you want to try to avoid is when you come in to this home, you knock on that door, try not to appear afraid or nervous. And I know sometimes it's hard to do that. Maybe you haven't done this a whole lot, but you want to have that confidence like we talked about before. And one of the things that gives you that confidence is just spend a little time before you go out there. Try to know what you're getting into. Research through your computer records or whatever data you may have. We call them a referral here, where the worker gets the information in a little packet, and they call that a referral. And then that's where they go to make their visit is off of that information. So do some checking if there's a name, those kind of things, so you don't have to be so nervous when you go out there. Again, don't appear bossy, arrogant, or have that I don't care attitude. We all have our days. We kind of get frustrated and tired of dealing with people sometimes. But that can come across in a real negative way, and it can cause problems that you don't need. It can make a person become aggressive with you, and we don't want to do that. Always keep in mind, too, with your job, what you're doing when you go out there to this home, you have a purpose in mind, and however the system works where you're at, you've either got state law or your policies, your procedures to back you up. So there's usually not a reason that you would have to argue with someone. So don't get baited into an argument back and forth, because arguments escalate. They start out verbal, and if the person realizes verbal isn't working right now, then the next step is physical. So we don't want to get a person to that point. We're not going to argue with them because we don't have to. We state the facts, why we're there, doing what we need to do, and then we let those stand on their own. Another thing, too, that gets people in trouble is sometimes the situation may not be real good. You need to be honest with people as much as you can, so don't tell them everything's perfect when it's really not, because at some point you're going to have to reveal the truth, and it can be a lot worse if all along they thought everything was fine, and then you've been lying to them, and now they can get real upset. And I don't want to imply that, if it's a dangerous situation and you need to be less than truthful to get yourself out of there, then by all means. But just don't make it a habit to go in and tell them everything's great if it's really not. Because, again, you're just avoiding conflict is what you're doing. You want to one of the things you don't want to do is apologize for asking questions. You have to ask difficult questions. You don't want to demean your authority by saying, hey, I'm sorry, but I have to ask this. Sometimes, if you have to ask a difficult question, I usually tell people, I'm going to have to ask you some difficult questions, but they're important to my interview, or I wouldn't be asking them. If somebody starts to get upset at the questions you ask, and this could be totally random, and this is one of the things I always try to point out why it's so important to understand that everybody is a stranger, that we don't know who they are. We never know what questions we may ask may lead to that frustration. If you're asking questions and all of a sudden they get the impression that you're implying they don't take care of their family member, even though that's not what you're saying, they can become upset. So if you see that happening and you see they're starting to get increased in anger and agitation, don't just keep on with that. Change your plan up a little bit. Change the question. If it escalates too much, get yourself out of there. But don't just keep on and keep on. And it's kind of like where I'm from, we have rattlesnakes. And when I'm walking through a trail, if I hear a rattlesnake rattling its rattler, it's giving me a warning. It's telling me don't come over here. So the last thing I want to do is go over there and poke my finger at it and get bitten. Same thing with a person. If their anger is increasing, they're giving you those warning signs. They're telling you this is not something I want to deal with. And if they're becoming aggressive at that point, we don't want it to escalate any further. So we want to figure out a different way to ask that question or move around it. And then last but not least, if you are threatened, if they make any type of threat, whether it be implied or it be implicit of, hey, if you ask me one more question, I'm going to hit you, I'm not in the mood for this, then you're done. You discontinue your interview and you stop. And it's really easy sometimes to fall in the trap of the person saying, oh, man, I shouldn't have done that. I'm sorry, I've had a bad day, whatever else that they may do to try. Once they realize, they shouldn't, that they've kind of crossed that line, sometimes they try to get you to stick around, and it's a hard and fast rule. Once they make that threat, you leave. And it's like Dr. Phil always says, the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. So if they've made that threat, they'll get there again. They'll get to that point. Next time they may not be able to get control of it. They may turn more physical, and you missed an excellent opportunity to get yourself out of there. So if they make a threat, hard and fast rule, you're done. You're going to leave. Some other things to think of is to pace yourself and don't get in a hurry. If you guys are anything like we are here, we have more work than we can deal with. So if I finish everything today, it's going to be there tomorrow. What we found in studies that I've done of police officers getting hurt is a lot of times they miss detail because things get routine or they get in a hurry. It's a very big thing that gets us in trouble. It's the same thing with you guys. And if it's a situation that's dangerous, you walk up, you're by yourself, you see something, and you say, "Man, this just doesn't look right. I shouldn't go in here, but I've got to get this done today, so I'm going to go ahead." That's what's going to get you in trouble. So don't ever do that. If it comes to getting work done or your safety always comes first. Pay attention to things that are going on in the home. Check history, backgrounds, whatever resources are available to you. Try to find out as much as you can on the individuals before you go out there. You don't have to spend a lot of time, usually 5-10 minutes, but don't just grab a referral, look at the address, and go out to this home and just walk in there. Try to do a little background on it before you go out there so you know who you're dealing with, what's been going on, and is there any type of things like listed here, domestic violence, assaultive behavior, those kind of things going on there. What kind of neighborhood are you going into? Is it a high-crime area? Any neighborhood, any house, you never know who you're dealing with, but at the same time, we have certain areas in the city that I work where, for example, drive-by shootings or drug activity tend to be more prevalent. You want to be aware of those kind of things. Is there gang graffiti all over the the neighborhood, fences, homes, buildings, because that tells you, if you see those kind of things, that type of activity is very active there. There's obviously gang members that are working in that area very heavily. So you want to be aware of that. Watch the news, see where high-profile things are happening, shootings and those kind of things. And most of you know what kind of areas you're going into ahead of time. Another thing, too, I always recommend is anytime you pull into a neighborhood, drive around the block. Don't just pull up to the house, park, and go in, but drive around the block and get a feel for it. See what's going on. See if there's anything that you need to be alerted to that could be a potential danger. Plus, it gives you an idea. You can kind of look and get a layout of the house a little bit, because you're going to drive by and just sort of get that feel of things. Apartment complexes, I strongly recommend, if there's apartment complexes you go into on a regular basis, get a map for that complex so you can have that with you, so you can park as close as you can to the building you're going into, and you're not roaming through a complex, walking through breezeways and those kind of things. But again, drive around the block. Don't park right in front of the house, and don't park in people's driveways. You don't want somebody pulling in and blocking you in if you need to get out in a hurry. As you're walking up to a house, listen. Don't just walk up and knock on the door. See what's going on there. There may be a fight going on inside the house. There may be an argument. The door may be open, and they don't even know you're standing there, and you can observe and see if there's drugs laying on a table or weapons laying around. Take a little time. Don't get in a hurry, and assess the situation. And as you're walking up to, look for signs of an animal. Things like a dog house on the front, or you hear the dog barking, or those kind of things. Animals can pose a real problem, and you don't want to get yourself in a situation where you can get hurt. Don't ever let somebody answer the door with their large dog and say, "Hey, this dog won't bite. Come on in." All dogs bite. It just depends on the circumstances, So make sure they put that animal up. And I usually tell them to secure it in a garage, in a backyard, somewhere in a room that they can shut the door. Because invariably, if they don't secure the dog well, it'll get out and be back dealing with you again. So, really check for animals and things too. Make a note of all your exits. When you come into a home, think to yourself, if I have to get out of here in a hurry, what's going to be my best path? Most of the time it's going to be the way you came in, and you want to try to keep yourself closest to the exit or to the front door. However you're going to get out of there, keep yourself closest to that as well the whole time you're in the house. Always ask and find out who else is in the home. Don't just walk in a house and assume that you're talking to the only person there. There may be 5 or 6 people in the back of the house. That may not pose a problem, but it could. You just want to know if there's a lot of people in the house so that you know what you're dealing with. Allowing one person to talk at a time. Sometimes you have to talk to a husband and wife. That may be part of the caretaking responsibilities, or whoever you need to interview in the home. And I try to stress to people that, when I'm talking to them, I can only listen to one person at a time. So I only have one talk at a time. That avoids them from getting in an argument and kind of keeps you more in control of the situation. After your visit, don't sit in front of the house, make your notes or do whatever else you're going to do. Remember, you're in unfamiliar territory. You may not be looking around and things and paying attention to what's going on. So when you're done, go ahead and get yourself out of there and just drive on out to a safe location and somewhere that you feel more comfortable with. Also, too, if you're going to have people, you're going to look around their house, check the conditions, those kind of things. A lot of times the people you're going to see may be bedridden in another location in the house. I always have the person whose home I'm in, I tell them or ask them, I need you to can you show me around your house? Show me where the person is that I'm going to be visiting with. Something like that. Puts them in front of you so that you can see and watch them a little bit better, but then also if it gives them a little bit more sense of control. They're in charge. They're showing you around their house. Pay close attention for weapons, handguns, those kind of things. If you see those laying out on tables, bars, chairs, whatever, I strongly suggest that you not go into that home. Just the fact that gun is there, it's easily accessible, creates a problem. And so just really pay attention to what's around and what's in that house when you walk in the house. If the situation does become dangerous, the person becomes threatening, remain calm, and you say, yeah, that's easy, for you to say, I'm in a dangerous situation here. But what I mean by that is you have a plan. Your plan is always the same. You're not going to arrest this person. You're not going to have a confrontation. You're going to leave. And if you think about, I guarantee you probably somebody that's listening to me now has been in a home where somebody's gotten aggressive or given them a problem. And the majority of the time, what they want is for you to leave if it gets to that point. So if you do that, the situation in and of itself is going to de-escalate. So keep in mind, if you need to tell them, okay, I'm leaving, or whatever you need to do, be quiet but firm. You don't want to get into a shouting match. You don't want them to start escalating their fear or their anger. And keep it simple and direct. If you need to say things like, get back, stop, I'm leaving, be very simple with it. If you start using a lot of words, people don't respond to it when they're real upset, and it just becomes noise. You don't want to become defensive, and the reason I say that and what I mean by that is nothing personal. You don't want to let emotion creep into the situation, because panic is an emotion. So that's why I say, by remaining calm and knowing your plan is always the same, you're just going to get out of that house. You're going to do everything you can to leave the situation. And in most cases, that's going to be more than enough to calm it and get you out of there safely. So keep in mind, people have weapons in their homes. Every home has them, whether it be kitchen knives, baseball bats, whatever. Don't ever think this is a small person. I can deal with them, because small people can have a lot of fight in them. So bottom line, just don't underestimate anyone. Don't think I got this under control, because it can get out of control real quick. One of the things I do for the police department, I'm a crisis or hostage negotiator, and that's one thing I've learned really quick is I am very rarely, if ever, in control. Usually the person, they know what they're going to do. They've got in their mind, what they want to talk about and those kind of things. So, don't underestimate anyone is what I'm getting at. Don't be caught off guard. Don't be walking into a house and expecting nothing to happen. In most cases, you're going to do your visit and everything will be fine. But as soon as you start thinking that's going to happen in every house, you're going to get caught off guard and somebody's going to challenge you. Anytime you're going to remove a person from a home, consider their situation high risk. I don't know how the laws and procedures may work in your area, but we as police officers can take adults that cannot care for themselves into protective custody, and oftentimes Adult Protective Services workers are the first ones out there to do that. And so oftentimes this makes family members upset, so just remember, if you're going to do something like that, it should be considered high risk. Keep in mind when you're talking to somebody, try to watch their body language. In the full version of this, I have a video that I show that helps explain this a little bit better, but I'll try to explain it as best as I can and try to get through all of these slides too. But basically watch people while you're talking, really listen to what they're telling you and watch what their body language is doing too, because people get nervous and they start communicating on that subconscious level. We all do it. The thing is, too, again, just kind of backing up with body language is things like aggressive behavior, clenching the teeth, clenching fists, those kind of things. People will do that when they become upset or nervous or they start to get angry. So really pay attention to their body language, because a lot of times their words will be saying everything's fine, but their body's saying, hey, I'm getting upset and I'm getting frustrated. Depending on your location or where you are, we have pretty big issue with meth labs in Oklahoma, but I'll say that any type of house where they could be cooking, selling, or making drugs, you need to start being aware and being alert to that. Get familiar with what types of drugs and things are being made in homes in your area. I think meth labs, pretty much people are seeing them nationwide. It just depends on where you are, is how prevalent they are. We have a pretty big problem with them in Oklahoma, and so, I instruct all of our workers and kind of educate them on what to look for. Main thing about meth labs is everything, all the chemicals, all of the things that are associated with the production of methamphetamine is dangerous, so you don't want to have a lot of contact with it. Don't touch anything, don't handle anything. If you get into a house and you think there's something here that looks like a lab, which I'll show you some pictures and other things here in a little bit, then you need to get yourself out. Don't spend any extra time in there. As soon as you realize that's what it is, then get out of there. A couple of things that you're looking for: they have a real strong odor, usually of paint thinner or paint. You may walk in a house and it smells like they've been painting all day, but it's obvious they haven't. There's no fresh paint on the walls or anything like that. So that's a big cue. Another thing too that sounds kind of strange, but in the methods, there's different methods that they use to cook it, but if they're actively cooking the lab in one of the traditional cook fashions, when they start doing that, it gives off an odor that's very strong, and it's like cat urine, and it's very thick. I mean, it's a real strong odor. You would smell it through the front door. And I get asked a lot, well, what if they just have a lot of cats? yeah, that may be the case, but that smell's never proven me wrong. Like I said, it's so strong that it just really permeates the outside the front door and in the house, and that's something that you'll smell as well. So you don't want to expose yourself unnecessarily. You don't want to touch anything, and if you get out of the house, stay upwind. Don't, stay. If you can still smell it, then you need to get to a different location. Labs are contaminated. You need to contact 911 as soon as you think that that's what you have, and get the appropriate help out there. We don't go into any labs unless we're all suited up and properly equipped to deal with that. There's two types of labs that we're seeing now, what's called cook labs and what we call the shake and bake or the one-pot method. And some common lab items that you'll see with both of these types of methods is glass containers or jars, and they'll usually have like oily residue or some kind of oily chemical-looking substance in them. Plastic tubing, coffee filters, funnels, chemistry-type equipment like you might see in a science lab, cooking oil, propane cylinders for the heat source, gas cans, strainers, those kind of things, anything that they can use to process or filter that stuff. Bottom line, for making methamphetamine, you have to have pseudoephedrine. So you get that in diet aids, diet pills. You also get it in cold tablets like Sudafed. Other chemicals that they use, that they need for their product. Things like starting fluid, alcohol, iodine, hydrogen peroxide, sulfuric acid. And the reason I point these things out is you may see a lot of these containers laying around. As you approach the house, you may see stuff like this in the bed of pickups, in the back seat of cars. Really check as you're walking up, maybe laying on the front porch, in the front yard, around the trash can, laying around the house. Things that, these are everyday household items that you don't normally see large quantities of it. Sodium hydroxide or lye, rock salt, which can also be just regular table salt in large quantities. Muriatic acid, red phosphorus, which they get from match heads, road flares, toluene or paint thinner, and acetone or fingernail polish remover. Sometimes they use things like chloroform, ammonia, freon. These are some other chemicals that may be present. Your regular cook labs, the photo I'm showing you here, you can see the starting fluid and the pseudoephedrine or the ephedrine, what we call bubble packs. You'll see large quantity of those that isn't normal. That's not normal consumption that people would have around their house, and some other containers and things. And here you see the salt, some more pseudoephedrine, some other little chemicals and things. And this is out of a traditional cook lab. This is something that we see in a lot of people's homes, in their cars. A lot of times they won't make it at their home or at a location. They'll go somewhere like out in a wooded area or a secluded area, and they keep these kits like this with everything in them, these little boxes or tubs. And you can see the plastic tubing, the glass jars, other things that they would need. This is something that's a little more typical that we see when we go into a home. This is someone has converted their bathroom. They have a heat source, a hot plate, and that's where they're cooking or doing their meth. And so something like this you would smell definitely as you walked in the door. But, of course, if you saw something like that, it'd be pretty obvious. But that's just an example. Here's some other items that were taken out of a meth lab, kind of spread out here, just to kind of show you how they all look. You can see the gas can with the tubing coming off of it, and some of the other plastic containers and things. Those are very common. This is the newer method that they're starting to use called shake and bake or one pot. And basically all the chemicals are the same. Everything you use to manufacture the product still is the same, as you can see on the right. And on the left, you see just a plastic container, a bottle. Sometimes it's a jug, a bucket, anything that they can put this stuff in and let it ferment and sit. So if you see something like this, this is very peculiar, and law enforcement should be notified. These are very volatile, so if you do see something like this, don't figure out a way to get yourself out of there quick. Make up an excuse or whatever you need to do. These things blow up, fairly frequently and cause fires, especially when they try to remove the lid if they don't do their container properly. So those are the kind of things you need to really look for. So just kind of in conclusion, I'll try to leave a few minutes here so you guys can ask me some questions if you need to. So it looks like our time's going good. I just want to try to impart to you to stay aware and keep your safety in mind. When you get ready to do a home visit or you get ready to leave your house every day, start being vigilant, paying attention to what's around you, and just being alert. And you want to keep safety in your mind. When you're at work, don't think about what you're going to do when you get home or what you're going to do on vacation. Think about work. Stay focused. That's what it means by keeping your safety in mind. You can't let your guard down. The problem is, for us, and I know it is for you guys too, is you get complacent because you start doing this stuff and you have success and things are going okay. For example, you may make 100 home visits and not have a bit of trouble, but on the 101st, you run across somebody that, just wants to give you a problem. They do not want you in their home, and they're willing to become aggressive to prevent that. So don't let your guard down. Stay aware of what is around you, and never hesitate to call the police if you need help. I can't stress that enough, and the reason I say that is oftentimes when I get called to a location, people usually apologize for bothering me, and they're not bothering me because it's my job. It's what I'm supposed to do. So, again, depending on your policies, procedures, things, but I don't know how that works, but I can know, speaking from my agency and from our standpoint, if you need police help, don't hesitate to call us. That's what we're there for. So I guess I'll ask at this point if there are any questions, or I'm not sure how this would work at this point.
This is Aubrey Grant at NAPSA, and we do have some questions. First of all, we had a few people ask, you mentioned checking cell phone signals when they get to a location. What if they don't have a signal? Do you have recommendations? And some people said they try to travel in pairs, but sometimes there's only one person. They find themselves alone and without a signal. Do you have recommendations?
Sure, and I always tell people, it's a decision that you have to make based on the situation that you're in. And if I would tell you if it was me, and I didn't have a cell phone signal, I would try to wait and do that visit where I could take somebody with me, because if you get in there, you're not going to be able to call for help. And at least if you've got two of you there, it doesn't eliminate all risk, but, statistically speaking, you're less likely to have a problem if there's two of you there. And, you got to think, too, you guys are doing this day in and day out. You may there may be something there that tells you that it's okay to do this, but on my just me personally, I would say to have a strong recommendation that, at least have somebody else with you at a minimum. Because, again, if something does go bad in there or a problem occurs, you have no way of calling for help.
Okay, thank you. And the next question, this person says that personal information of APS workers can be found easily online. And especially in small communities, they live within walking distance of their office. Are there any procedures to put in place to contain information or to use information appropriately?
We have procedures like for us, and I know in our state that none of the personal information is required to be posted. So I know that they can post like office address and office phone numbers. But that to me isn't a risk, because if you're at work, that's okay to have that information. So I wouldn't be sure, how that information would be posted. In my longer presentation, one of the things I talk about that I don't have a lot of time to go in here, but I've even got a slide, and I talk about it heavily, is information that you put out yourself, like in social networking sites and other things. That's something you need to be real cautious of, and make sure you lock your Facebook accounts or anything like that down. One of the things that I do periodically, too, is I Google my name because I don't have a very common name. It's easy to search, and I look for anything that could be out there that could be compromising to me. And most of the time it's where I've done press releases or other things like that for the police department, or presentations, things like this. So that is a good idea to check those sort of things. But if there's something out there that puts your personal information, your home address, I would, whatever channels you have to go through your agency to request that maybe that not be posted for safety reasons, that may be the way to go about that, because it's okay to post office information, but I would be hesitant about posting personal information.
Do you have recommendations if a client does get information and uses it If it depends on what they're doing. If
in most cases, I mean, that I would think of, if they're using it inappropriately, it would probably rise to the level of reporting it to the police. It depends on what they're doing. Like if they're contacting you frequently and you've told them not to, where it could become an instance of them stalking you or something to that effect, I would definitely notify the police. If it's an issue of, you're just not comfortable dealing with this person, then, that would be taken through your in-house, your supervisor, so that maybe you wouldn't have dealings with this client anymore or something to that effect. But if at any point anything they've obtained rises to any type of criminal level, or you feel threatened at all, then don't hesitate to make a report or report that to the police.
Okay. The next question is that this person says that some of the employees in their office have shown interest in getting concealed carry permits for guns. As an agency, they have a policy against that, and they're curious what your opinion is of social workers carrying weapons like guns or tasers.
Our policies in Oklahoma are the same. DHS or Child Welfare and Adult Protective Services are not allowed to carry firearms. And the only way that I would say, for me personally, that I would ever say that would possibly be an option is if you're going to make them commissioned officers, if you're going to basically give them law enforcement powers. And then, which isn't a good idea if you think about it, because there's a division there. There's the social role and there's the law enforcement role. I really think if you follow these procedures and you recognize dangerous situations, a firearm can get you in more trouble than not having that in there. Because if there's not a firearm there, if you have one, there is now. Every house you go in, there's going to be a firearm. It could be taken away from you, or there's a lot of issues with that. And I mean, we train our officers heavily in the use of the firearm and the liability that goes along with it. And I think I'm in agreement. Just again, the division between the social side and the law enforcement side, I think they're two different roles. And the firearms is probably not a good idea.
Okay, and this is going to be the last question. Actually, there are a couple questions on this that this person has noticed that meth labs are often guarded by dogs that appear to be dangerous. Is that something that you have noticed, and do you have any recommendations for dealing with dogs that might be vicious?
Yes, that is a very good point. They do things like, they put cameras all around their house. They do have anything that they can keep people away, and animals are a way of doing that. And what we do a lot of times in our city is when a worker goes out and they have vicious animals, I always think of like pit bulls. They train them to fight, and they're just large dogs that can be dangerous. The workers in our area will not even go into those locations without calling us, because if you think about it, if that dog comes at you, there's not a lot you can do. You can run, but if it gets a hold of you, it can hurt you severely, and it can even kill you. So they like having an armed police officer go with them in those kind of situations, because that rises to a level that it's a little more dangerous than just an average home visit. I'm not saying you have to do that, but that is definitely an option that I would strongly recommend, is that maybe you have an officer go with you. And I usually, I don't get involved, because people take more offense kind of at police coming in their home when you're trying to help them and you want to stay in that helper role. So I usually just kind of stand back and maintain a presence, and unless the worker needs me beyond that, I don't intervene or talk or anything like that unless they need me to do that. Okay,
thank you so much. And we're out of time today, so I want to thank everyone who participated, and especially thank you to you, Lieutenant Gorley. My contact information is on your screen right now. Very shortly, I will send an email to everybody who's viewing the webcast, and in the email I will provide a link to a survey. We ask that you take a few minutes to complete the survey so we can use any feedback that you have so we can continue to improve our webcasts. I've already emailed a link to the PowerPoint to everyone who was registered as of this morning. However, some of the email addresses were rejected, and we had about 50 more people register today. So if you have not received the link to the PowerPoint, it is on our website, and if you need me to email you the link, then please let me know, and I'll send it to you. If you have any additional comments or questions about today's webcast, please contact me. In 7 to 10 days, the webcast will be archived and available on both the NCEA and the National Center on Elder Abuse websites. We encourage you to share the webcast with others who may find the information useful. As many of you know, NCEA collected information from the people who were registered for today's webcast to determine the topic for the next webcast in the Worker Safety Series. The most popular topics were recognizing and de-escalating potentially violent situations, environmental hazards, when and how to involve law enforcement, and safety planning. And for the next webcast, we will get someone to address one or two of these topics, and I will be in touch about that soon. Again, I want to thank all of you for participating in today's webcast, and especially thank you to you, Lieutenant Gorley, for taking your personal time to help us all learn about worker safety for APS. So thank you all very much, and have a great day.